So, welcome to IMC, and for those of you online, welcome to our Sunday morning program. And for today, I would like to talk about the role of posture in this practice that we do. And I want to start with an analogy of driving a car. Some of you might have this experience, or maybe didn't have some of what I'm going to describe. You're driving a car, maybe in the freeway even, fast and lots of traffic around you. And you remember that you forgot to return an important phone call while you're driving. So of course, the thing to do then is go, both hands, oh no, how could I have done that? Oh, this is... We don't do that, do we, when we drive? Oh no, you keep driving, right? You don't give up the posture for this tragic realization. Because more tragedy will come if you do. You lose something if you go, oh no, and collapse on the steering wheel. You lose your attentiveness. You lose your care for everyone else. There's a lot that you lose in that process. If you're sitting there in your car and there's, traffic's going along, but a good clip, but not fast enough for you, and you're kind of annoyed with it all, and you don't just kind of like sit back and put your hands like this. Well, in that case, again, you maintain a certain posture when you're driving. You don't collapse, you don't pull back, you don't shrink. You maintain you might have little variations if you feel a little bit something, but you maintain a posture so you don't lose your attentiveness. Now, outside of something as important as driving a car, people do all kinds of things with their posture. They do collapse. They do cross their arms and sit back. They do kind of raise their fists, all kinds of things they do with their posture. And people might feel, well, darn it, I should be free to do whatever I want. I feel free when I do these things, But we lose ourselves sometimes and it represents our loss of ourselves, how we succumb to posture sometimes. If we sometimes are so filled with desires that we're free to act on desires, but we lose ourselves in the pursuit of those desires. Addictions, for example, or intense neediness, like I have like clawing neediness, the way I want something. And we lose ourselves in that process, not just our attention when we kind of like ahead of ourselves. If we get, into a very angry situation, and we're really angry, and we feel I should be damned free to be angry if I'm angry, but there's also, we lose something about ourselves. If we lose ourselves to the anger, and we lose the capacity to pay attention, to be present. And just like if you lose yourself to anger, really lose yourself, rage when you're driving, this is usually not a good idea. Not a good idea for the drivers, probably not a good idea for you. So we lose ourselves all too easily in all kinds of emotional states, motivational states that we have. Sometimes we lose ourselves because we freeze. We get all rigid and hard. Sometimes we lose ourselves in wanting to blame and fight, and to criticize. Sometimes we lose ourselves in our restlessness. We get so activated and agitated that we don't even know, what foot to stand on. You might feel that way when you're driving, but I suspect that when you're driving, you don't succumb to the restlessness. You kind of like, within reason, you're maintaining your posture. And because your life depends on it a little bit. So what I'm suggesting is that we lose ourselves to our emotions sometimes, to our posture, by how we relate to it. We give ourselves away to it sometimes. And it's not to deny that we are this way, but we don't have to give ourselves away to it. And one of the ways not to give ourselves away is to maintain a balanced posture in the midst of it, in the flow of it all. And this is what I think the Buddha recommends. This is what I see the statue we have here of the Buddha, that for me that it represents that. The Buddha's posture is balanced, upright. He's not pulling away, like folding his arm and say, who are these people? Who are come here, they're not monastics, so what good is this? He's present, he's not pulling away, he's not leaning forward into the world. He's just fully there. I don't know if you probably can't see, but he doesn't have his eyes closed, but he's not staring. He's seeing, but he's not caught in what he's seeing in the world. The Buddha is sitting in a strong way, balanced way, and he's available to the world, and he's available to himself for all what goes on. And so when the Buddha, before he was enlightened, there's a story he tells, that he was meditating in the forest, jungles by himself, and it seems that he would get scared. Sounds in the jungle. He says even the peacocks walking around, and maybe at night or something, he didn't know what it was, and he would be scared. And so he decided that what his practice was going to be, whatever posture he was in, he would continue the way he was. So if he was doing walking, he said, he would keep doing walking meditation. Sitting, he would keep sitting. If he was standing, he would keep standing. And if he was lying down, he'd keep laying down. Recently, I was reminded of this story by a trauma therapist. And he loved the story. He said, this is exposure therapy. That just kind of just expose yourself to something and then find your way until, he said in his language, until you get deactivated, until you can relax. And so I don't know if that's the wisest thing to suggest always, but this idea that he would stay in this posture, and the idea is a dignified, balanced posture. And what's the advantage of doing that until the fear passes? One is a balanced posture is one of the best places in which to monitor yourself with what's going on, to not lose yourself, but to gain yourself, to increase your capacity to know and be aware and to hold whatever's happening for us without succumbing, without giving up to it, losing ourselves to it. And also not running away from it, not distracting us from it. So there's this wonderful combination of benefits from a posture which is, in your way, the equivalent of what the Buddha's doing. In your way. It doesn't have to look as nice as his. After all, it's a metal statue. It's just an artist who made that one. But that you would sit and not lose yourself, monitor yourself well, and keep noticing the tendencies to lose yourself. Notice the tendencies to start tapping your fingers, because you're impatient. The Buddha doesn't tap his fingers, not because it's wrong to do that, but that is kind of a way of losing ourselves, distracting ourselves, or getting caught up in the impatience, perhaps. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but is it the best way to process? Is it the best way to really be present for what's here and be in the driver's seat of your life rather than the passenger seat, or rather than just kind of, giving up or something, losing yourself? There's something very powerful about being careful with our posture so the posture can reveal better to ourselves what's really going on. So if you're sitting meditating this way, especially I'm talking about meditation, it transfers to daily life as well. But you're sitting this way, and you remember that you didn't make that important phone call in meditation. You can feel the power of the arms, the power of the collapse that wants to happen. The arms that want to go like this, the collapse. But you're committed to not doing it. Not as a repression, but as a way to feel the energy, to feel the sensations, feel the motivations to collapse. Wow, my collapsibility is huge right now. I had no idea collapse could be so powerful and convincing and authoritative. I had no idea that collapse could come with all its lawyers arguing its case that this is why you should collapse. Wow, this is quite something. But I'm not going to collapse, not in meditation. But I am going to be present for this. I'm going to know this, see it, until I see it through, until I get to the other side. Many years ago, I love this story that someone told me what he had learned to do. I think he was maybe an alcoholic, some kind of serious addiction. And someone told him that when he got the urge to drink, he should go find a nice, comfortable chair to sit in and not move, not leave the chair. No, not moving wasn't it. Don't leave the chair, no matter what. And he said it was hard. The power of addiction can be overwhelming for people, and very convincing, very hard to resist. But he was told to don't leave the chair. And what he discovered, that it would be like the rodeo than a wild bronco. But he would stay there, and the other analogy he used was that of a wave cresting. And the wave would get bigger and bigger, more and more powerful, and at some point it would crest, and he'd find himself on the backside of the wave, and everything would settle down. And he said, that was a turning point for me. He felt so empowered, he felt so capable, he felt so like, I can do this at least. And that was a real turning point for him in his addiction, when he learned to not move from the chair. So to learn to feel fear, if the mountain lion's coming, don't just stand there. But in meditation, to learn to feel fear, anger, depression, sadness, all kinds of things that can come that normally we would sink into or give ourselves away to. And we do it in our posture, unconsciously. But here, to keep the posture that's dignified and balanced, and see it through to the other side, if possible. And what does it take to do that? It's not an easy thing sometimes, what I'm describing. But we have all these instructions in mindfulness about how to bring attention, careful, mindful attention, to the body, to the feelings that we have, to the impulses, the mind states that are operating, the desires and the aversions that are operating. And as we start teasing apart the package, looking at the component pieces of it, rather than one big wave, it becomes easier and easier to sit there, and that which can relax has a chance to relax and soften. And something can begin shifting. And there can be a sense of empowerment or inner strength that can arise from being able to maintain a posture through the difficulties we have. So we have in this tradition the teaching on the 5 hindrances, and this is the place to practice this with. The 5 hindrances are divided into kind of 3 different areas. The first area has to do with our relationship, basically with our relationship to what's external to us. Kind of we're looking outward to the world of desires and the world of hostility, of ill will, what we don't like in the world and what we want in the world. So that intense way in which we want things we lose ourselves in that wanting. And some people lose themselves with carrying the banner of freedom. I should have this. Some people lose themselves in hostility to the world, blaming others. Some people live in the world of externalizing their life. Desires, what I like, what I don't like. Blame, not blame. But blame, praise. And then some people live in this world of hostility, and it's everything out there has to, fit the way I want it to be or something. It's sad to lose yourself in this way, but to sit, to learn to hold a posture and sit and see that movement, to feel it within us, is really powerful. The first hint I had about this, it's not that big of a deal, I suppose, but the first hint I had of myself doing this when I was practicing in Thailand, and we didn't eat much food there. Like we didn't have and no food in the afternoon, so lunch was a big deal. And lunch was kind of, down a hill and through the jungle. You had to go walk there for a 5-minute walk or something. And I'd be ravenous. And I noticed that my center of gravity would be about a foot in front of me. Because I was kind of like all my concerns were up ahead. And I could say, oh, wow, Gil, what are you doing out there? And I would kind of take a deep breath and kind of bring myself back to myself. And then within a few seconds, I found myself, and that was like the seesaw, reclaiming myself and losing myself just because of lunch. And so beginning to see how this operates and see it clearly, because we're not giving in to the impulses. Because we're standing here, we're kind of staying, keeping what we're doing in a sense, the posture we're in. Again, not to repress it, so we can see it really clearly. We see it with a kind of clarity we can't see if we give into it. Come back here. Come back here. And also a balanced posture is a posture not only where you can be balanced in a sense, but also a posture where the tension that's building up has a better chance to relax and soften. And some of the lawyers I think the lawyers are, their commission, what they get paid, the lawyers of the mind, is in tension. The more you pay them with tension, the more they work for you. But the lawyers of the mind don't, if you're relaxed, they tend to kind of relax too. So to begin seeing how we involved with the external world, the first two hindrances, being caught in desires, caught in ill will. The second, the next category of the hindrances have to those to do where we get caught in our internal world. The next one is usually called sloth and torpor, but it turns out the word that's translated sloth in Pali means becoming stiff and rigid. So it has, I think, is much more valuable understanding, because we freeze, we get numb, we get all kinds of ways in which we kind of stop or get stuck in our inner life. And we do kind of, and torpor, sloth and torpor. What is torpor? I think it's also kind of it's kind of a numbness, a kind of lethargy that comes from resistance. We kind of pull in and collapse into ourselves. And so that's easy to succumb to with a nap. Isn't that nap the right thing to do? Is it, do we want to stay frozen and stiff? This posture, you can't take a balanced posture where your breathing doesn't freeze, your breathing doesn't get tight. The breathing has a chance to notice if it does get tight, and maybe you can adjust it and change it. Work with it and keep it soft. And so some of the stiffness, the rigidity, the freeze doesn't get too locked in. Maybe. And then the second one of this second category that's internally focused is restlessness, agitation, excessive activation. We're running around, excited, not really, or filled with regrets, with remorse, with self-criticism, with, just something is terrible here, I did the wrong thing. And this also is something where people lose themselves in. This inner world of agitation. And one of the really fun meditations I've had is being really restless in meditation and just sitting still and imagining my body as like a big, big room with walls. And the restlessness is ping pong balls that are bouncing around inside. When I used that analogy, it was kind of fun to sit there and feel the restlessness. It was certainly better than the alternative, was to believe the restlessness or be a victim of the restlessness or feel, oh, this is wrong or bad, or feel the authority of the restlessness, like this means that, adding, this means that or something. As opposed to, oh, this means the ping pong balls are going wild in there. And that was fascinating to sit there and just watch it all kind of move. And it was when I had that analogy, it was the first time in my meditation where I had the experience of not being caught by the authority of the restlessness, but just allowing it just to be there freely, but not losing myself to it. So this kind of moving around, bouncing around. And then there's doubt. Doubt is the fifth hindrance. But I think doubt is too tame of a word just to call what it is. It's a little bit too intellectual, cognitive. I think it can be, being bewildered, perplexed, lost, not understanding what's going on. And that can be really hard for people. And sometimes maybe it's even reasonable. Things are so confusing. But is that a reason to collapse? Is that a reason to pick up the other hindrances and blame or want something, want some food that's going to solve it for me or comfort me? But to sit or to stand or to lie down or to walk in a posture that's balanced. Some of these things I'm talking about that catches our posture and changes what we do and how we are really powerful, difficult. And I've found what's useful is to go walking. And so it's in the walking, the movement, there's like massaging everything and giving, there's kind of I've done walking meditation really fast when I was really pissed off. And it was only the fast walking that kind of allowed me to hold it and gave me the capacity to be with it without getting all being bottled up or something. But to do walking meditation in this balanced way, and then from there, with the posture of a balanced walk, walking fast if you need to, then monitor yourself and notice what's going on and be with what's going on and maintain that and see that and let that be the place where you look for balance rather than collapse or whatever it is. There's lying down. I think it's called one of the 4 dignified postures in Buddhism. So sometimes the wisest thing to do to get balance is to lie down, but don't lie down in the fetal position. Nothing wrong with it. I do the fetal position when I have a migraine. I have no shame about doing so. It seems like the best thing I can do. I put my head under the covers, I get in the fetal position, and I have my practice. I practice with the migraine. But if you were talking about this kind of emotional stuff, maybe a fetal position is really good sometimes. Maybe that's the best option sometimes. But the idea is, with this kind of balanced approach I'm trying to suggest today, is find a posture that that's the middle way, the balanced way to be with it all. Not for, not against, not losing yourself, not collapsing. Sometimes lying down is the way that then you can kind of track and be with things and discover how powerful these forces are, and discover how to relax with them, discover what they, see them more carefully, what they are, discover what's underneath them, what's driving them, or simply discover how to have a larger capacity to hold them, to be aware of them. And this is, I think, an undervalued part of this practice. Many people come to this practice to fix themselves, to make something better, and to solve their problems and be, But sometimes our problems don't get solved, but rather our capacity to be balanced and open and free becomes so big that the so-called problem now just becomes a little detail. I have all this anger. I have to deal with my anger. Oh, the anger is still here, but it's like a book on the bookshelf in a big room, as opposed to the book, that just, this is the whole thing. So kind of letting the awareness, the body become larger, the felt body, the experiential body that can hold it and be with it. The mind becomes bigger, the heart becomes bigger. So the role of the body, the posture. I would encourage you to practice this within reason. You don't have to go around all the time, but look for opportunities where you can take a balanced posture, upright, aligned posture that works for you, your body, your situation. That is your posture where you feel like this is the posture where I'm not giving in and I'm not pulling away. I'm not succumbing and I'm not resisting. I'm just there. And that'll look very different for everyone, what that looks like, because of all kinds of issues. But find it for you, and then breathe with it, be with it, meditate in that. See what goes on, what you learn, and what unfolds, and how maybe you'll learn the difference between being in the driver's seat and losing and not being in the seat. Giving up to some, putting your emotions in the driver's seat, which what happens, for example, when we collapse or we act out and react. So here, present with it. And you might discover all kinds of interesting things. You might discover that some of the things that you're troubled by, emotionally, for example, maybe are not so strong if you don't give into it with your posture. I saw that many years ago when I was in college, and I had some kind of, this is I don't think it was so serious degree of depression. So I want to preface it that so no one else thinks that has to be like what happened to me. But I had college student depression, whatever that is for me, one day. And I was just kind of miserable and depressed. And I came home to this barren house that we had hardly any furniture. And it wasn't a particularly inspiring place to be, but there was a couch. So I sat down on the couch, and I don't think it was possible to be to slouch in the couch more than I was. I mean, I think my shoulders were in the crack between the backrest and the seat, And it was so dramatic. And so I thought, it was so dramatic I noticed, wow, Gil, this is quite something. And it occurred to me, out of the blue, Gil, why don't you sit up straight? So I sat up straight, and 90% of the depression kind of vanished just in taking that posture. It's seldom that easy. Who knows? Maybe, I'd asked someone for a date and she said no. So, maybe it wasn't more than that. I don't know what it was, but I was so impressed by the role of posture, that a posture can make that kind of difference. And I'm not saying it's that easy, but posture is a very important part of mindfulness practice. The Buddha, when he taught mindfulness, he taught mindfulness of posture. And he taught the mindfulness of these 4 postures and everything in between. But he named specifically walking, standing, sitting, and lying down. And later in the tradition, it's called the 4 dignified postures. And practice in those. And when the time seems right, do the same thing that the Buddha did. If you're afraid or angry or something, don't change your balanced posture. Stay with it and see if you can, what happens if you stay with it without giving into it. But respecting it. Respect everything about yourself. Respect these feelings and the difficulties and all that. But stay in the posture until the wave crests, which someday it will. So, mindfulness of posture. So, we have a few minutes. We can take a few questions here or comments here. And then at some point we can go outside afterwards. And so if you'd like to stay, we'll put some chairs in a circle in the parking lot. Those of you who want to take off your mask can take it off. And we'll continue discussion out there. But for now, I see a hand over there.
So Camille and Tim have an announcement to make?
Oh, I didn't know.
That's okay?
Announcements first, yes.
It's fine.
Hi, so my name is Camille, and this is Tim. And next Sunday, the 20th, we will have, for the second time, it's a monthly group that has restarted for kids. It's called Dharma Rocks, and we meet here at 11:15 to 12:15 each month on a Sunday. And it's approximately 3rd grade through 6th. We had an 8th grader last time, that was fine. Mature 2nd graders, also fine. We have a great time. We did mindfulness of spookiness. We'll see what comes up this coming month, next Sunday.
Okay, thank you. So I have a question about, so my reaction to things has improved, I feel like there is space.
No, your reaction?
So I'm just going to remove it for briefly. So, before I was always reacting, right? I would say, I would be, finish it, I have something smarter to say, or, I'm mad, I have to tell that. So that has slowed down, and I have become more patient. I feel good, like, there is no rush. Like, I don't have to really tell the mean things I feel about anything, I guess. So, but when, previously, it would be like I'm saying stupid stuff, mean stuff, but I feel like that is the greatest thing I have to say. And later on, it's like, oh, why did I say it, right? So how come, when we are in the thick of the action, the mind is so numb that in a way, it's like we say stuff and then we're like, oh God, I didn't mean it. I do like them. I rule around my aunt, or, I was mean, there is rush of emotions, but afterwards,
Yeah.
So why do we do stupid stuff?
Great. Well, I probably don't have a good answer. It's a good question, and I probably don't have a good answer. But one of the reasons is because we lose ourselves in our emotions. We lose ourselves in our desires, and we get pulled into it. And and one Buddhist answer to that question is because of the intensity of our desires, our cravings. Then suddenly those take over. And what I was trying to teach today is a way of beginning to learn how that operates in us. Because if you take a posture that you're not going to succumb to things, but watch it and find your freedom with it, the better and better over time, you'll notice that tendency from the inside before you do it. And then you'll have the capacity not to give in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Maybe then over here first, and then you can do it. Yeah. Hi.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
I've heard that in Zen, posture is extremely important in Zen.
I'm going to turn up the volume. Okay, go ahead. Hold that horizontally.
Like this?
Horizontally flat.
Oh.
Yeah.
I've heard that in Zen, posture is extremely important. Can you please talk a little bit about how
Yes.
Zen treats
In
this?
Zen, posture is really important. And there's a number of reasons. One is that this kind of posture you see here with the Buddha, it's a yogic posture. And so you get yogic benefits, especially if you can sit in full lotus. And so, but it's also a kind of a crutch. I used to use full lotus as a kind of a crutch because I would get concentrated quicker and I would fall asleep. I wouldn't fall asleep so much because you get a really good energy going, like the chi goes much more easily. But to rely on that rather than building it up from the inside out, but to have it from the posture, I don't think it's really so wise for what we do in mindfulness practice, where we want to really meet ourselves and be with and see what's going on, and not have some kind of yogic kind of effect that kind of makes us concentrated or have the energy flow. But anyways, a yogic posture. Also, some schools of Zen, they have a very, very different philosophy and worldview about meditation and Buddhism than Indian Buddhism has. And so this posture is considered, people take, in Zen sometimes, Zen is a ritual. It's a ritual of being a Buddha. And so you take a posture of a Buddha, and then over time, you grow into it. But it's more like a ritual enactment of Buddhahood rather than, a path to Buddhahood or something. And so those are some of the reasons.
Is there a specific posture that is is there a posture that is unique to Zen that you always practice Zen with, something like that? Or
Is it unique in Zen?
yeah,
Well, it depends where you practice Zen. If you practice Chan in the Chinese Zen, they have a whole different attitude towards it. In Japan, in some schools of Zen, they have very strict attitude towards it. Here, the Zen practitioners in the United States have learned that not everyone who practices Zen are 22-year-old men. And where in monasteries in Japan, the real training monastery, most of them are 22 years old, or in the early, mid-20s, and so what we're capable of doing with this body changes over time and circumstances. And classically in Zen, there's very little tolerance for people who have disabilities. If you can't sit full lotus, you can't be here. It's very strict. And they gave when I was in Japan, Japanese monastery, they gave me some tolerance. They didn't expect me to be in full lotus, but if you go into full lotus, but they expected I don't know if I can do it anymore, but if you do the Japanese did it full lotus, and there was a kind of like a hazing to go into the monastery, and so you had to sit there for hours, in full lotus. And they would come with a kind of a stick, and if you come underneath their hips here, like this, if you put the stick all the way through, like this, if you're sitting in full lotus, you won't hit anything. But if you bring your foot down, the stick would hit. And so, so it was little bit, so little bits, strict. And I think some of the strictness wasn't exactly the essence of Zen. It was something else. that's going on over there. So it depends. So that's a long way of saying it depends. But Zen does rely a lot on posture, and I think it's part of. I learned a lot of the benefits of a good posture through Zen. I think it's one of the strengths of Zen that they focus on posture, but it can be overdone. Let's see, you're next.
Yeah, so 2 questions on movement. The first one during meditation itself. I know some people are very strict on not moving at all. They film themselves and make sure that over an hour they haven't moved by a millimeter. How important is it to be completely still even if you sense some discomfort? So that's the first question. The second question would be, outside of meditation, if you find yourself getting frustrated, drumming your fingers, something like that, I imagine you'd want to approach it with curiosity and to relax. But should you try to stop the drumming, or how would you deal with that?
You should do whatever feels right to you.
Okay.
But what feels right has something to do with what your practice is, what you want to see happen. If you want to really get to the bottom of what's happening for you when you're drumming your fingers, and you want to study it, like what I'm going to make it object of mindfulness, maybe sometimes it's good to keep doing it. You're doing it anyway. I'm doing it. What's going on here? So let's keep doing it. And then that gives you access to what's happening. Another day, you might decide, I'm not going to even begin. I can feel the impulse. Exactly. Now let's see what's going on. So what's right depends on what you want to do. If you're trying to make a message to people, be really clear that what feels right is letting them know. Then keep doing it if it's, unless you're insulting them or something. It depends on what you feel. There's no shoulds here. But in terms of practice, sometimes it's good to, like in terms of not moving, there's advantages to not moving. Sometimes it allows the mind to get calmer and quieter. The more we move in meditation, the more we kind of activating the mind. So a lot of movement keeps the mind activated. And so it can get quieter, more concentrated for some people when they don't move. It can feel really nice as we get more stiller and stiller to keep that stillness of the body. It feels more natural then. And sometimes it's the wrong thing to do. We start having pain. Now it could be that you say, I keep having pain, I'm always avoiding it. I think what I'm interested in doing today is to stay with the pain for a while to see what I can learn. Maybe I need to learn a little bit about my reactivity to pain. That feels right today. And then after a while, you feel the pain for a while. I learned a few things about myself, but now it's getting grueling. I don't think I need to do it now. Now I don't want to meditate ever again. I think I overdid it. I won't stay with the pain that long. I'll move sooner. So there's all these choices you can make, but you do it out of what feels right, with the criteria that's appropriate for the occasion.
Yeah, very good, thanks.
And that's where you have to use your intelligence.
Yep, so it's a matter of bringing the right attitude to it, basically mindfulness, maybe that curiosity, and to relax into it.
Yeah, and also the criteria, the intention, the motivation you have. What's the purpose of this? What's the purpose of being still? What's the purpose of moving and going along with it? And if you say, I'm going to sit still, what's the purpose of it? I've done this, so I'm not saying it's you, but it's me. What's the purpose of sitting still? To look really good. Everybody, I'm the last person sitting still, I'm that good, so.
Thank you.
So let's
Announce the tea, please.
Oh, it's tea today?
Yes.
Oh, today's tea. Okay, so we won't have the circle outside then, but we'll hang out and talk.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so we have tea today outside, and what that means is that there's some little snacks, some tea, some things to drink, and we can hang out in the parking lot and chat and talk, and rather than having a discussion, round circle discussion. And So that should be very nice. I look forward. Yes?
And I suggest that you get your cup of tea before you go outside.
Yeah.
And, everyone is welcome to take part in it.
Yeah, so the hot water urn is here on the counter in the kitchen, so make your tea. And outside, we can take the masks off. They're optional. You can do whatever you want, but we can take them off if you want. But when you come back into the building to go to the bathroom or get more tea, please put your mask on again. So thank you all very much.